shocking news and what happened this week. The main opposition party in Mozambique, known as Renamo, has rejected the result of the elections and accused the ruling party, known as Frelimo, of rigging the votes. The opposition party leader called for a nationwide demonstration, and according to report, he stated, I quote, "This is the beginning of the revolution in Mozambique," end quote. Now, in case you didn't know, Mozambique gained independence from Portugal in 1975, but 2 years later, a brutal civil war erupted between Frelimo and Renamo. The war only ended yesterday in 1992 after claiming the lives of over 1 million people. Now, since the end of the war, Frelimo has been the only team scoring goals and winning every elections. The reason why I gave you that quick history is to help you understand that the wounds of Mozambique have not yet healed. It's still too fresh, and this situation could easily lead to an escalation of violence, which, to be honest, nobody wishes to see happen. Now, according to reports, in some areas, violence has already erupted, and the police have claimed the life of a 16-year-old boy while dispersing Renamo supporters. But the police claimed it was an accident. Let's hope the regional or even the continental leaders will not just sit there and watch. Listen, if I was a head of state, my foreign minister would be living in Mozambique in Maputo until the situation is resolved. Listen to this one. In 2021, the British Army based in Kenya caused a fire during a military exercise that burned 12,000 acres of land, which heavily affected the local population. The Kenyan court had ordered the British Army to pay compensation for the environmental and health damage caused by the fire. These include permanent eyesight problem, breathing difficulty, the loss of livestock, and farmers who have not been able to grow back their crops. However, 2.5 years later, the victims of the fire have not received a penny from the British. In fact, the British are demanding that the victims provide more proof of the damages caused by the fire they started in a foreign country that burned down 12,000 acres of land belonging not to the British people but Kenyan people. Listen, I don't blame them. If clowns still perform, it's because the circus is still open. Now, over 7,000 people signed an open letter addressed to the British government. Now, let me read to you 3 quotes from that letter. 1. The British Army is actually using every trick from the colonial rule book to try and not pay the Kenyan people compensation. 2. The fact remains that the British Army destroyed the environment in Kenya where they are guests, and they don't want to pay us for it. 3. Stop treating Kenya like a colonial outpost, end quote. Now, it is under this climate that next week the British King will be visiting Kenya. However, I am pretty sure the host will keep the guests far away from the Kenyan people who are demanding justice. Anyways, before we move on, remember there is still no justice for Agnes Wanjiru, the 21-year-old Kenyan woman whose body was found dumped in a septic tank after a night out with British soldier. Please look it up. Zimbabwe is losing its teachers faster than short people lose their temper in relationship. The country is experiencing an exodus, not the movement of Ja people, but its teachers fleeing to greener pastures in other African countries. The report claims that 300 teachers leave the country every month, which is an average of 3,600 teachers leaving the country every year. Because these teachers are struggling to cope with a $350 salary per month and poor working conditions. Now, I know some countries on the continent where teachers are paid less than that, and I won't name any country, they know themselves. My message to those teachers is this: please consider the cost of living in Zimbabwe before thinking about going there to replace those teachers. Anyways, every country, across the continent carry a reputation or some types of stereotype attached to them. Now, whether it's true or not, that's not the debate. I've always known Zimbabwe to be a country with the most educated people across the continent. Now, whenever I've met Zimbabweans, they've never disappointed. But for transparency purposes, I don't know much about Zimbabwean men. I've only collected those data from Zimbabwean women community. Well, I can't help it. I support women empowerment. However, on a serious note, The Zimbabwean government should address this problem as soon as possible before it gets worse. I mean, we can't keep on sacrificing the future of Africa just because some people can afford to send their children to study abroad. I would pass a law that guarantees better working conditions and salaries for teachers, and failing to do so will be considered as treason. Now, according to a recent report, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and his special envoy to the Great Lakes region are concerned about the possibility of a direct confrontation between DRC and Rwanda. They said, and I quote, "The risk of a direct confrontation between DRC and Rwanda, who continue to accuse each other of supporting armed groups, is very real," end quote. Now, just in case you didn't know, Kinshasa accuses Kigali of supporting one of the many rebel groups in its territory called M23, while Kigali accuses Kinshasa of supporting the FDLR rebel group, which opposes the leadership in Kigali. Both countries express their desire for a peaceful solution, but at the same time, they accuse each other of lacking the political will to achieve it. Listen, if someone sits you down and explains the situation in Eastern DRC to you and you understand it, it means they didn't explain it properly. Anyways, I find the UN concern interesting because the UN troops have been in the region since 1999, and it's not as if they could have prevented any confrontation if both countries wanted to fight. So I don't understand these concerns, especially they come just as DRC demanded the UN to withdraw its troops from the region. Let's not forget that the UN also contributed to fueling these divisions by producing reports after reports, accusing and blaming one party or the other. I mean, they did a great job in terms of producing reports, but that was not their mandate. The mandate for the 14,000 UN armed troops in the region was to bring stability, restore peace, and protect the civilian population. They failed to deliver that, according to the local population and the Congolese government. No wonder DRC wants to take the matter in its own hands. However, in my humble opinion, the reality of the matter is this. The reason why Eastern DRC has not known peace is because too many players benefit from the disorganization and instability in the region. It's always the same people scoring goals while the population stand aside and suffer. Like, I believe if both parties decided to sit down and work on a lasting solution, there would still be problem. I mean, according to reports, there are over 120 rebel groups in DRC. That's crazy. These are not rebel groups. These are private armies. The authorities in Niger have informed the world, and France in particular, that the former president Mohamed Bazoum, who has been under house arrest for a few months now, attempted to flee the country but failed. Listen, in my village they say, what an old man can see while lying down, a child even standing cannot see. But my question is, why is Mr. Bazoum in a hurry though? He should let justice do its job. We know he filed a legal case at the, against the authorities in Niger at the regional court, and is planning on taking his case to the UN Human Rights Council. Anyways, I remember not too long ago El Macron telling us that they talk every day. I mean, if this is what they talk about, if escaping is what they talk about, then I guess there's nothing to worry about really. Because at this point, Mr. Bazoum will need to call the Expendables, the Avengers, and John Rambo himself, and include the Fast and Furious guys, because there's no getting away from this one just with normal people. Now, according to Niger's authority, he was planning to flee with his family, cooks, and his security to a secret spot at the outskirts of the capital city, then hop into a helicopter belonging to a foreign power. Now, before you ask which one, well, they didn't say which foreign power, at least to my knowledge. Why? I don't know, but listen, the bets are off. Your guess is better than mine. It's as good as mine. Now, some people might wonder, why is he trying to flee with his cooks? Listen, as an African, let me tell you, we are losing talent. It's not like before where everybody could just make your favorite dish without even think about it. Nowadays, all you hear, 200 grams of this, 400 grams of that. People don't cook with flair anymore. So when you find someone who can give you, who can make your favorite dish without thinking about it, who can make your favorite dish just the way you like it. Keep that person. Anyways, this prison break attempt also coincided with the first French groups arriving in Chad. But I'm not saying these two are connected, but I'm just putting it out there for your information. In my village, they say it is better to sit on a stool that belongs to you than to sit on a chair that belongs to someone else, because they can take it away from you at any time they wish to do so. In case you didn't know, Bissau, the capital city of Guinea-Bissau, was left in the darkness for 36 hours by a Turkish company because the government had not paid the electricity bills. This is embarrassing if you ask me, like, how did we even get here? However, on Wednesday, the government negotiated with the Turkish company and it turned the power back on after receiving $6 million out of the $15 million in arrears. Listen, I was about to say something, but remember I told you that African leaders have a strange sense of humor, and Guinea-Bissau is a country I would love to visit someday, so let me just be quiet. If it's your first time interacting with my content, I would like to welcome you and let you know that I have a podcast on YouTube full of non-political stories. You can find it in the podcast sections of the channel. I also have a book of Proverbs which you can access through the link below. Moreover, I create fire content that speaks for itself. Please check out my catalog and thank you for your time.
We, ni nini?